Hi, I'm Thomas Senna, co-host of the SNL Hall of Fame podcast.
And I'm Jeremy Dove, co-host of the Bigger Than the Game podcast.
Jeremy and I have joined forces to create a new podcast called Pop Culture 5 to ask the question, what are the 5 essential things about any given pop culture topic?
It could be 5 essential movies by an actor of our choice.
Or 5 essential songs by a musician of our choice.
We're not making a list of our personal favorites, it's the essentials.
And we better do a good job of justifying our essentials because one of us will have veto power each episode.
And I'm ready to tell Thomas why he's wrong.
All right, Jeremy, all right. Well, actually, why don't we give everyone an out-of-context peek at what we've been up to? So Pharrell was right next to me, and we looked at each other, and we were kind of like bobbing our heads. He wasn't wearing his hat. Nobody really knew he was kind of incognito. But I had to do a double take. I'm like, that's Pharrell. And then he looked at me.
You just slipped that in there, this big name drop here. I was next to my man Pharrell. Like, whoa. I never heard this, everyone.
So join us to celebrate and discuss the essentials of pop culture.
Listen and subscribe to Pop Culture 5 wherever you get your podcast.
Hey, it's time to gather around the water cooler to talk the SNL Hall of Fame. Hey, it's JD here, and I'm back again at the SNL Hall of Fame, heading down the stairs to the lunchroom where our water cooler is located, and I'm going to meet my friends Joe and Shari to talk about this week's episode of the SNL Hall of Fame, as well as this week's episode of SNL proper, hosted by Michael Keaton with musical guest Billie Eilish. I look forward each and every week to talking to my buddies. Joe, how is it going, friend?
I'm great. How are you?
So far, so good. You know, it's what is it? It's Sunday. It's sunny.
Yeah.
I'm smiling.
Yeah, it's fall, or as I call it, spring in reverse.
Yeah. How about you, Shari? How's things going?
Hanging out at the ye old water cooler and glugging down my water bottle as usual.
Oh man, we need a t-shirt that just says glug. We'll think of some merchandise ideas for the SNL water cooler, SNL Hall of Fame water cooler. Well, guys, this week was a fascinating episode. It was a little different than we're used to with the SNL Hall of Fame for a couple of reasons. One, well, actually, they're all related to the same reason. And that reason is we had former cast member Robin Duke nominating Joe Piscopo this week. But Thomas, being the conversationalist that he is, managed to talk a lot about Robin Duke's history as well and what she's got going on in the future. So if you haven't had a chance to listen yet, give it a listen. If you don't have the time to listen, Shari's going to give you a recap right now.
Yes, I am. Oh, this was a spectacular episode, JD. We got to speak to, as you just said, the one and only Miss Robin Duke, who is still doing improv after all these years and was very excited to talk about that. As JD said, Thomas is such a great conversationalist that he gets to the heart of the matter and still managed to find out what was going on with Robin. And she let us know that she is doing some improv and that she's going to be hitting the road and that she's hoping to get a book published. So that's very exciting news. Then they went on to really give us a bird's eye view into what it is like at Saturday Night Live, how a sketch is created, how long it takes to get it to the stage, how, the whole process. It was quite fascinating. And Robin talked a lot about sketches that she did with Joe, including the Whiners, which was one of the first reoccurring characters in the Ebersol era. She then went on to talk about Christmas sexual innuendo, another sketch she did with Joe, and to talk a lot about Joe's quick wit and the way he could tweak a sketch and make it better, and how when she watched him and Eddie, she knew she was watching something special. So they really hit on just about every aspect of Mr. Piscopo's career, as well as giving us a real, almost, definitely a cast member's eye view of the whole process. And it was really a terrific conversation from beginning to end.
Joe, I'm curious if you've sleuthed a little bit and looked at that era of SNL for other Hall of Famers. Is there another Hall of Famer that has a path that might be similar to Piscopo? Should Piscopo get in?
When it's weird that you said that because when I was ranking him, as we'll get to that later, he kind of reminded me of Shari O'Terry. Now Shari, we always have a hard time doing this, bouncing back and forth between Shari and our co-host Shari. As she pointed out, Shari O'Terry came, dominated, and left, and never really came back and cameoed or anything. And to me, Piscopo has some similar to that, where he came, he did his tenure, he did his impersonations and characters and such like that, and then he just kind of left, and he never really came back to cameo. And actually, I want to say the first time we saw him back was at the 40th anniversary when they were doing the musical um segment, and he did Frank Sinatra, and it was wild seeing him, because I honestly,
I might be wrong, but I think he was on the 15th anniversary
I
as
believe
well.
that too. Okay,
Like I have a vague recollection of him wearing a cutoff shirt with his muscles, and he's pointing people to 8H by flexing.
Yes,
Like he's ushering people into the 8H.
yes,
That's how I remember it.
that's the Chevy Chase
might be
cold
totally
open
different.
about him doing the fall. But yeah,
That's right.
that was like a real quick like cameo, just kind of
Yeah.
showing up.
Yeah.
But not. I mean, that was him kind of playing himself. But
Yeah.
as far as him being a cast member and playing a character or doing an impression, like he wasn't on the show proper. He wasn't on. Like he never really came back during the Carvey or Will Ferrell.
No, you're totally right.
So at the very least, it was cool to see him at both anniversary shows. So at least they acknowledge him somewhat. But as far as coming back to either hosting or cameoing or whatever, he never really did that. Kind of similar to Shari O'Terry. The same way Shari O'Terry came back for the anniversary shows, he came back for those. But nevertheless, the same comparison with Shari is very important. They had similar roles where they the show was coming out of a dark era. So not that the show was dark, but it was after season
Well,
5.
they fired the whole cast.
Well,
in season, in at the halfway point of season 6. That's pretty dark.
Well, I was going to say he showed up after season 5, so it was kind of Saturday Night Live in name only. And then they hired a new cast, Gilbert Gottfried, etc., and and Piscopo. So and then he was great, and he did update, and then I don't want to say he carried it, but he was a strong person on the show until like Eddie Murphy and Julie Louis-Dreyfus showed up. And that to me is similar to Shari O'Terry, where it was that weird season of '95, and they got rid of everyone: Sandler, Farley, Myers, Kevin Nealon, and then you got this new cast. Only don't get me wrong, Shari O'Terry wasn't exactly the only person who went from that. So at least Piscopo has that thing of being one of the few people that went from season 6 to season 7, but it's just really similar how they were these people that not carried the show, but like were strong points of the show from one era to another, as a big cast transfer. So I mean, and then they came, did it, and then left. So that's just what I have in mind.
That's an interesting comparison.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
I think you're barking up the right tree there, Joe.
Me too.
Shari, do you want to share your ratings this week, or your ratings, your
We'll get there.
rankings?
Okay, so we're talking about how I think people voted this week. All right. Last week I forgot poor Shari O'Terry on my list. So please, guys, if I forget anyone, let me know. But I went over it a couple. I know I went over it a couple times this time to make sure I didn't forget anybody. So hopefully I didn't. All right. Speaking of Shari, so at the ground floor, curse of the musical act, as we talk about weekly.
Right.
You too, alas, and then Zweibel, a fabulous writer from the first 5 years that I just don't think the casual fan is going to remember. Barkley, as Joe often says, and will probably say today, great host, but, not his first forte. So good host, but not Hall of Fame worthy, perhaps. At least I don't think the voters are going to think so. And again, he's not been around in a while, and I just don't think they're thinking about him. DeVito, same thing. Great host, awesome host, but hasn't been on in years. And though he's still somewhat in the consciousness with his Sunny show gig, I think a lot of casual fans aren't really going to remember his classic episodes. Garrett Morris, extremely important cast member from the first 5 years, but I just don't think memories are that long. Same thing with the aforementioned Shari O'Terry. She was great when she was there, and then she was gone. Just ahead of her, I put Piscopo because of the fact that he was so attached to Eddie. I think he has a little more relevance to people's memories, but still
That
see
makes sense.
don't see him being huge, but don't see him doing too badly. Next, Mr. Adam Driver, who is on a total roll and is very much in the stream of consciousness right now, and who knows, could show up this season. For sure, I think he'll be there in February at the 50th anniversary special. Just above him, and I see the Driver and Bennett being very close, is Beck Bennett, who I think is going to do quite well, a la Will Forte and Kate McKinnon of last season. I think he's just going to miss it, but I do think he's going to do well. And I think the one who's going to do even better than him and just get a little shy of getting in will be the fabulous Mr. Bob Odenkirk, who I think people really have a fondness for with what he's currently done, and with, of course, the Matt Foley sketch being as popular as it is. So that's where I think I see people voting this season for our new nominees.
So were there any changes you made in the bottom part? Maybe we should start identifying those when we can, like starting next week. But just if off the top of your head, if you remember any that you shifted or moved around a little bit?
Not really.
No?
My bottoms.
It's pretty much stayed the
My
same.
bottoms
Joe will be
pretty
the
much
one who
stayed the
probably
same.
moves around.
Actually, no. I mean, my bottom
Okay.
two are going to be you two for the same reason I always say, which is great band, doesn't really interact with the show that much, and then, as I usually, say, it should be my catchphrase. Saturday Night Live is a great place for catchphrases. So, Barkley, great host, but not his forte, not the best host. Above him, DeVito, like I said, had a great run, and then stopped. And then above him, for the opposite, a similar but opposite reason, Driver having a great run, and then above him, Shari O'Terry, for, as I said, Kane did great, left and never looked back. Above him, above her, Beck Bennett, for being a great utility player and having a great run. This is another thing. As time goes on, I kind of think more and more about these, and I forgot how long he was on, especially compared to other hosts and cast members. Above him is today's focus, Piscopo, for, as I said, just carrying the show. Not carrying. I don't want to keep using that phrase because I don't want to downplay the rest of the cast members, but for helping the show get from season 6 to season 8, and teaming up with Eddie, and then being all of these great things, impersonations and characters. And above him is Odenkirk, for, as Shari has said, and then Zweibel for being a great original cast member, original writer and cast member, season 5, but original writer. And then Garrett Morris, for, as I say, week after week, he's amazing, and this is the least we can do is get him in the Hall of Fame. I mean, this is, what he deserves. So that's how I rank him.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. The views on Garrett Morris, they both are coming from the same place. Whereas he's very deserving and he needs to be in there along with, Lorraine. She didn't make it last year. And then Chevy's the only other one who is missing. Everybody else is in. So it's going to be fascinating to see. It's going to be fascinating to see if Garrett gets his deserving spot
Just
on
deserved,
the.
yes.
That's right. Yeah. Now there was a pseudo closing argument this week. It was a little shorter and sweeter than we're normally used to, but I'm wondering if anybody wants to comment on Robin's last words about Joe.
And
I think
go ahead.
I was just going to say that she talked a lot about what I mentioned in the summary of how quick Joe was and how fast he could find a joke and just bring it onto the screen. And she also talked about, I don't know if she talked about this in the final words, but just before it, I believe, how he was so comfortable on camera. And it's like he was a natural and she really didn't care for the camera. But her big emphasis was on how he could just find a joke, grab onto it, make it funny, move on to the next joke. And she so admired that about him and how quick-witted he was.
Yeah, it seemed like there was admiration there. It would be interesting to talk to Piscopo and hope that we would hear, similar stories from him about Robin, because, she really was sweet in the way she spoke about him.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
He seems like...
Joe, anything you want to comment on?
Yeah, he seems like a genuinely nice guy, really. Like, he seems to adapt well with cast. Like, because his cast completely changed. And he still was able to, be a part of each of them. And then the other thing she pointed out was how much he focused on studying his impersonations, and that comes off. I mean, he did Reagan, Andy Rooney, David Letterman. Now, the reason I picked out those 3 is those were contemporary current people at the time. Like, the other people he impersonated was I wrote it down twice on accident, but he did Jerry Lewis, and then I put down Frank Sinatra twice. I didn't mean to do that, but it's
well, it was a great impersonation.
It is.
So I mean,
and he took it very seriously. And actually 3 times. This is literally what my notes say: impersonation, Frank Sinatra, Jerry Lewis, particular about Frank Sinatra. Like but that to me is exactly about like how he is about that, because he also did him in a brisk iced tea commercial, and I think he was that voice for Frank Sinatra. But anyway, to get back to my point is he was not only doing classic impressions like Sinatra and Lewis, and Dean Martin, that's the person I meant to write. But anyway, like he was doing those classic ones, but he would also do like those current ones, and he had them nailed down, which meant and this is at a time where you had to get videotapes. You couldn't just go on YouTube or listen to their book on, their audio tape or whatever. You had to actually get a videotape and hit play and rewind and focus and stuff like that. And, that takes, that's a real focused talent that you need to have. So, I just felt like that's something that he was able to adapt to his cast, do these great impersonations that, he really had to study. He's just a great utility person. Almost, now hear me out. I just want to emphasize almost, the Phil Hartman of his era. I mean, just the way that Phil was able to be the straight man in Van Down by the River and then turn around and be Caveman Lawyer. Piscopo is able to do that where he could be, in the whiner sketch and then turn around and be the straight man in another sketch. So,
I think that's completely fair.
So, and he seems like a genuinely nice guy. If you heard him on Fly on the Wall, he was nothing but open and optimistic and happy. And I never, ever, ever got the feeling that he felt like a has-been or forgotten or something like that. He felt proud to be a part of that era, be a part of Saturday Night Live history, and then he left and did his thing. And then sure, he's not, like a Mr. Hollywood, Billy Crystal, Mike Myers, movie star, but that still hasn't gotten him down. He still loves talking about his history, talking about his role, with Saturday Night Live, and that says a lot, Yeah, he just seems like a genuinely nice guy.
Yeah, I think so too. I'll take her word for it, but I'm sort of thinking the same thing. Well, this is my favorite. This is my favorite part of the show. So, Joe, let's start off with your Hall of Fame moment.
Okay, this is a sketch that I think deserves a lot of recognition. This isn't the first time they did it last night, which is the TikTok sketch. Now, here's why I like it. It's commenting on technology now. They've commented on technology throughout, history, where like the Boston teams, the Jimmy Fallon, Rachel Dratch, where they have camcorders. Or no, there's another one, Garrett with Jimmy Fallon, where he was on his webcam.
Yeah.
And then Robin Williams did one where it was the birth of his baby, and it's kind of a comment on camcorder. And I mean, so there's all these comments on technology and how it affects our life and how we see life. And to me, satirizing that in a very minimal way, by the way, with TikTok, which is showing how all these different channels, when you watch TikTok or even Instagram, or there's even a Facebook version, it's like that where it's all random. Like your algorithm, it has no rhyme or reason to it. I don't know, at least not with mine, and that's how it is in this sketch, where it's just random people, and then sure there's a little bit of a theme, but not in a way that you would expect. And then I like the thing that Saturday Night Live does, where they show one character interacting with another channel. But it's because Lorne Michaels has this saying that he says, you should be able to watch an episode and know exactly when it aired. And to me, TikTok does that, where it dates the show in a very positive way. You should know that, this is from, even though they did it a couple times in the past couple of years, but to be fair, TikTok has been around the last couple of years. So you should know that this is from 2020 or later. So,
right.
And it's genuinely funny. So I just feel like that sketch, and also it's a multi-cast, not multi-cast, but I like a sketch
that's what I was going to say. You almost get the entire cast
exactly
inside of one sketch, and that's fantastic.
And you get different types of comedy too. So you might you had a couple impersonations in there, and then you had funny commercial parodies almost. So you're kind of getting a whole show in that little sketch. So I just feel like that one should be, put up there. So that's just, what I think.
All right. Well, you're who I asked. So that is good to share what you think. Now I'm going to ask Shari. What's your Hall of Shame moment, Shari?
My Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame moments.
The first 3 episodes were so good. And this one was a bit of a bummer. But I was a little disappointed. Actually, I was a lot disappointed. I do agree with Joe about the TikTok sketch. It was one of my favorite parts. And I do like the thing that I really loved was seeing all the rookies. We saw Emil Joaquin way more than we've seen him, and he was quite good. And I mean, in that PDD sketch, he was very good. I was so happy to see PDD back. So I agree with what JD was saying too about how they squeeze so much of this cast into that TikTok sketch, but they were squeezing the cast in all over the place. Ashley Padilla finally had a larger role, playing the wife in one of the sketches. But overall, I couldn't point to one specific sketch that I loved, but I did love seeing the cast a lot more and them downplaying the cameos a bit, but still keeping the cameos in there. So there was a nice balance. So that was one of the positive things I could say.
Yeah.
Very interesting, Shari. That is the first time I've heard you this season speak in a disappointed tone about this show.
Mhm.
So sorry you didn't. Hopefully, the Mulaney episode will pick it up for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the show.
It is.
Sometimes you're going to have hits and sometimes you're going to have misses.
That's right. Yeah.
I agree.
Speaking of misses, Shari, do you want to share your Hall of Shame moment? I guess you must have a couple to choose from here.
I painted with a very broad pen for this. Man, I just felt the writing because I'm all about the writing. And I felt like the writing was just really, except for TikTok, I like. And I love the Halloween sketch with Mikey Day doing his dance. I thought those two were very clever. But otherwise, I just thought the writing, and Pete Easy's sketch was pretty good, but I felt the writing was not. It's just been so, so strong. And they had a great host in Michael Keaton, and I feel like they did not use him at all. I don't think they
Really?
used him to the best of his ability.
All right.
I don't feel like they gave him enough to do, Joe. I feel like they sort of forgot about him a little.
Okay.
Joe, counterpoint?
Shari, you're ignorant.
No, don't do it.
I started it. You put the ball on the tee. I'm gonna hit it. I mean, what do you expect? You said counterpoint. It's Saturday Night Live. I mean, it's a sin not to. All right. So now here's the thing. Okay. Now first, I want to go backwards from what Shari was saying. Now I didn't think it was particularly a strong or weak show either way. I just felt like it was just a show. I didn't, that didn't really dawn on me. However, I thought they did use Keaton. He was doing voices. He was doing. I mean, obviously he wasn't he was doing characters, but not reoccurring. But like he was doing various things, and that's what he does. People forget that he's not just this great actor like how John Goodman is, where he could do comedy and drama, and then he could come over here and do sketch comedy and do all these different types of characters. But yeah, I actually had a hard time picking out a con. And that's the thing is, it wasn't strong or negative. Like, I'm not saying that like the show was so good I had a hard time picking out a con. It's just there wasn't one that really stuck out to me. Aside from TikTok, everything else was just kind of on the level. So when it was time to pick out the con, I was like kind of almost had to throw a dart at the board, but I guess I just kind of went with the 10-1 sketch, which was the table side one. Even though I felt like this is good for Keaton, this is good for a dramatic actor to play it straight and do this thing, I just didn't get what the joke was, that these two people reminded each other of someone and they were doing these dramatic monologues, and it felt like something you do in a dramatic scene and not in a comedic sketch. And I don't know, I just didn't get what the joke was, so that was my con. But then again, it's a 10-1.
Well, when it's a comedy show and you don't think it's funny, that is difficult to speak proudly of the show. But they'll be back, and like Shari said, there's peaks and valleys, and it was a valley this week. I'll be honest with you, I went to watch it, and my TV is totally screwed, so I didn't even get to see it.
Oh no!
So yeah, I haven't seen it yet because I've been working all day. I haven't had the chance to try and find an alternate way of watching. So yeah. We really appreciate you stopping by the water cooler with us this week. It's been absolutely fantastic talking SNL and the SNL Hall of Fame with you two, as it always is. Next week on the SNL Hall of Fame podcast, and of course over here at the water cooler as well, we will be talking about a host who also was a contemporary cast member with Piscopo and Robin Duke, and that is Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And she will be nominated by Kalina Steckel. So yeah, it's good to have Kalina back, and I look forward to that conversation between her and Thomas. I look forward to talking to you two. And from the lunchroom, that's what we got to tell you this week. So stay thirsty. Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler. To connect with Joe and Shari, join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/SNLHOF. To email the cast, write to snlhofwc@gmail.com. Please subscribe, share, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. To podcasts and such.